seems to be the order of the day to stimulate growth in Botswana. We've seen in the past few months how there's been a ban on certain vegetable imports, there's been a ban on uniform imports, and this is done to try and stimulate local growth. Yaanong potso ke gore a me di industry tsotlhe di cateretswe. Gompieno re bua ka gore a di artists le tsone, do they also deserve to be included in the areas of local growth that needs to be given attention? And that's the debate we're having today on The Voice of the People. We are your favorite news, current affairs, debate, and analysis show. It is great to be back for the first debate of the year. And the motion we are talking about today is whether or not we should ban international artists from performing in Botswana. I am not alone in the studio. I am with my co-host, Mr. Fangz. How you doing?
I'm great, Chief. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic. And today we have a guest in the studio just so that he can give us a more expert opinion on this issue of artists and promoters. We have Mr. Seabelo Mudibe, right? Is that right? Yes, who will be joining us in about 10 minutes, and he will be giving us an expert opinion about this issue of artists and stimulating local growth. So, from the onset, in every debate, there's a side who's for it, who's a side who's against it, and I will be categorically clear. I am not for bans. I don't believe that they work. I think protectionism is dangerous. It artificially grows businesses, and people will always choose where to go. But, Mr. Fangz, ya ka re moitse gore ke motho o manganga, gape ke artist,
Ke nna wa kganetso.
o tlo go re bolella gore why the artist di tshwanetse gore di ban. So we also put this motion out to you, our Facebook family, and you responded in overwhelming numbers as always, and that was the objective, to get the discussion going. So we will get to your comments, but before we get to the comments, how about Mr. Fangz, just break it down for us where you stand in this debate and why you feel that banning international artists will somehow promote local artists.
Well, I mean, le nna ke tshwana le wena ga se gore ke motho o ratang go bana dilo tlhele ke rata go nna free wa bona. But what I'm noticing is that while other countries in Africa, their artists are making their art industries are growing, and their artists are making an impact not just locally but internationally, right? That made me start thinking, gore ka re mme go hana e ka re mahatsa a mangwe bone ba somarela their industries, they protect their artists. Rona, even though we know that we're such a tiny country with such a tiny population, we don't care about our artists. We want them to swim with the big fish out there, even though we know that our industry has not developed enough to get to that point where they can compete fairly. So we need to do something, and I think that something is banning those big fish from our small pond.
Yeah, look, I hear you, Mr. Fangz. Maybe just elaborate on us and give us a few examples of how this will work and why you feel that in the long run this will actually be better for local artists.
Well, the mechanic in my mind is like this, right? If you don't have local art, you don't have international artists, right? The likes of Casper.
You mean like at a show, for example?
Yeah, if you don't have local artists being booked, international artists being booked at nightclubs, at the event they're doing, right? That means it's not like events will stop. They won't stop, right? Because there's a demand. People want to go to nightclubs. People want to go to parties and so on. So what that means is, who are you going to end up having to book? You're going to have to book local artists. And what that means is they have more money, right, to sustain themselves and reinvest into their craft, into branding themselves, so that they can get to a point where they can compete with artists from South Africa, Nigeria, and so on.
Okay, we talk about our things. How international artists prevent local artists from growing to that level. Why do you feel that the international artists are somehow a barrier to local growth?
Well, because we have limited resources, right? An event has only so many hours before a hela. The budget for that performance, for that event, is only so much. So you then prioritize right? And what ends up happening is the international artists end up taking the bulk of the money, that is of the budget that is reserved for this event, right? Because whenever they're performing, they're leaving their countries and so on, right? Barona, di tebenyana, maybe the kombi and lesa para humpenu. Kamoso, he's back in the same place while the international artist is flying back home on a private jet to go drive his Bentley and so on. So the idea here is that that international artist is taking the budget,
right?
And secondly, they are also taking the space, the promotion time, because now they are being blasted on the poster.
Okay. I get you. Last question here before I get into my points, right? I just want to ask you, Jorge, so don't you fear the backlash? What do you think now will happen to our international artists when they go outside?
Well, I mean, maybe they will get banned out there. Maybe.
And do you feel like that's better for the industry?
I mean, what I would think is you'd probably have maybe 1 or 2 countries that might do that. Like maybe South Africa likes to respond to our bans, so they'll do it. Nigeria won't care. America won't care. So artists like Mposibina, who just came back from the United States right now, she's still going to get booked out there. Now, she might get booked less in South Africa, but frankly, if that's what that one artist loses in order for another 20, 30 artists to be able to make a living and grow their artistry, then I think that's a worthy
But don't you feel like it's entitlement on behalf of the artists to feel like the promoter should now be holding some debt to them just because they are local artists? And just the last one on as an add-on to that is that then should our artists that are outside, for example, working in soapies in South Africa, should they be terminated and sent back home?
Yeah, once again, like I said, one, I don't think most countries will do that, right?
Oh, so, you don't think they will?
No, I doubt it, because honestly, what does Nigeria, a country of 300 million people, care about this random artist?
Right, and then entitlement.
That's the first thing, right? And then the second thing is
because they're in business too.
Okay, I mean, but then you could say that our vegetable industry is entitled by wanting to be protected, or our beef industry is entitled by wanting to be protected. Ultimately, our priority is us, right? It's not external artists. Our priority is to empower Botswana, right? And that's the duty of every Botswana. That's why we pay tax.
Okay, I'm quickly going to just run through a couple of my points, and then we're going to go to a quick break so we can bring in our expert promoter to clarify some of the things you're talking about, right? But essentially, in economics, we are arguing this idea of protectionism
100%.
versus open borders.
Yes,
so,
free market.
the free market. Protectionism is where you protect your local industries. So now, I think protectionism, firstly, is dangerous, right? Because it's dangerous to long-term trade and integration. I'll give you an example. We've decided to ban vegetable imports from South Africa, right? So the farmers in South Africa are not happy about this. So who knows how they're going to retaliate? There's so many things that we depend on them for, that if they decide to shut the borders, like they have threatened so many times, the truck drivers, movement they hitang past Zira, then we are literally in a mess because we're a landlocked country. So that's one of the biggest dangers of protectionism, right? Secondly, it artificially grows your business only for you to fail in the free market, right? Because in the short term, in the short term, you will get a few more customers, right? But now, eventually, like I said, where's the world going? We're going towards integration, reducing things like borders. These are all steps that are in the pipeline to integrate. Now, what happens once we integrate? When a company or artist perform your guys back White City. Now, once we open borders, there's going to be a whole lot more artists who are going to come and go to this artificial growth. No, you're big. You're actually not big. It's just that there's nobody else who can compete with you, and that's dangerous because organic growth is important. It's important because then it teaches you how to survive in business. But lastly, before we head to our break, maybe we'll read 1 or 2 comments before we go to the break, right? Is that people will always choose where they want to go, especially people with money, right? So they will just go, for example, to go watch Burna Boy at the Delicious Fest in Johannesburg, right? So the only people you're actually hurting is the poor who can't afford anything else but to be subjected to come and watch your show with just local artists. And also, lastly, this really hasn't shown us how local artists are going to somehow grow themselves to compete with brands at an international level. So, for all of those reasons, Mr. Fangz, I think we should do away with protectionism. But let's read a few comments before we go to a quick break.
There's a live comment that just came in from Otlako Dioka, who says they make good music that moves us. Our local production is only developing in a few artists.
Okay, then there's a comment coming here from Tomahawk. Nice name, Tomahawk. Ari, what about Botswana working in countries? Should their jobs be terminated? You see, this is the risk factor that I'm talking about. Because obviously, South Africa, then you terminate their jobs, then they're like, no,
I think the critical misunderstanding here is...
And when your answer to this is that, no, you don't think it will happen.
Look at it logically, right? The critical misunderstanding here is how much does it cost to book somebody like Casper, right? Casper Hatakwano, it's hundreds of thousands of pula, right? No local artist commands that kind of fee. So that is a huge impact on our local artistic industry. It actually affects our industry. Now, if you look at Nigeria, for example, or even South Africa, right? A couple 100,000 pula is nothing to a multi-billion-dollar artist industry. So they don't care whether or not South Africa as a country, Nigeria as a country is not affected in any way by this, right? Casper is not affected in any way by the fact that he can't get bookings in Botswana. He's going to go to Prague, right? But our local artists don't have the alternative to go to Prague. They can only perform here, right? And Casper, by performing here, is taking that space away from them.
Okay. Look, I'm just going to read one more comment before we go to a break. There's a comment coming in here from Kinalemang Baruti. Ari, music industry won't grow. Think outside the box. No country can survive on its own. Music is an international language, but Bots artists can be booked outside the country. Think twice. And on that note, we would like to take a 1-minute break, and then we will bring our guest into the studio who can give us a more professional and expert opinion about the dynamics that go into artists and growing the industry. We'll be right back in a second.
You have big dreams for your business. In order to realize those dreams, you need to advertise with the best-selling newspaper by far, with the best online presence. Advertise with us.
The voice speaks for itself.
Oh yeah.
And we are back on The Voice of the People with Chief and Fangz. And like we said, we have got a special guest today, Mr. Sabelo. Liting, sir. So do you mind just giving us a brief introduction, Hella, of your background in the music or entertainment industry?
No, I've been in the industry for, 23 years. I've done almost everything that you can think of in the business. I've owned a record company, I've done many events, I've managed artists.
Okay. Yeah. So you really are an industry expert. Have you worked with international artists?
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So then...
Local artists as well.
And local artists. Brilliant. So then, you are exactly the perfect person who araba dipotso tsaka. Kana gongwe ke rathana ga go lofa. What I want to understand is, why is it, do you think, that international artists command so much more to get booked than local artists?
No, the issue is not about bookings. I think people need to understand, where the industry is at. The industry has long changed 2, 3, 4 years back. You know what I'm saying? To date, you can buy a ticket online, right? Online.
Yeah.
And you can watch maybe the Super Bowl from different angles in your TV set.
Yeah.
With your remote, like the backstage, you can see, they can show you behind the scenes and everything. You know what I'm saying? So you don't have to be at the event, right? So in future, you won't need to be at Delicious to see everything at Delicious, all the performances and stuff. You'll be able to stream. I think you've seen even in South Africa with when you ticket, they've got like some streaming option. Or do you want to stream the concert and watch it at home? You know, you can pay for it. So I think there's one of the things that our artists need to differentiate here is they must differentiate the grievances and complaints from how the business works. You get what I'm saying?
And that's what we're trying to understand is how the business works.
So Casper, Banner Boy, Davido, whoever, right? They have branded themselves in a certain way and costed their brands, right? We are operating in an environment which it's heavily controlled by influence. You know what I'm saying? Does this artist have influence? Do you have market prowess?
Okay, I want to interject quickly.
Yeah, let me finish. If you are starting out, you've got 1,000 followers on Facebook, right? And you just drop a song, and it's not rotating, and you say that your song is not rotating because Kabza is taking that space. I mean, you're being ridiculous.
On that point, quickly, on that point, there's a quota locally. There's a quota made by the government to mandate that radio stations.
Let me finish.
I just want you to answer this question on that point, right? There's a quota by radio stations that says, like by the law, radio stations have to play a certain amount of local music. Why do you think that's happening?
No, man. Who breaks songs on radio? That's what I'm saying. The industry's changed. You want to break a song, show people what you're doing in the studio. But no, listen.
But why is that quota there?
No, forget about radio. If you're still talking about an artist going to radio and trying to break out, you're wasting that time. You get what I'm saying? I mean, 90% of the piano songs are not on radio. But these guys are touring the world. I mean, I can tell you every day, I can tell you Kabza's catalog, right?
Yeah.
There's more than 1,000 songs.
Okay.
Out of those, one of the 1,000 songs, probably 950 of those songs are on radio. Listen, just a cue.
Okay, let me ask you a question, please. Right? Allow me to.
No. I just want you to understand something here. You're selling the product of artists. Probably I've realized you guys are selling your product in wrong spaces. You get what I'm saying?
Okay, so what's the right space?
3 days ago.
Please let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question. Right? What I'm trying to understand is why it would be a bad thing to stop international acts. Already, we have a quota. This is what I'm talking about. We have a quota that says you have to play this much local music on radio.
Who do that, but don't reject local artists?
I mean, have they rejected it on radio? Have Botswana stopped listening to radio?
No. People listen to what they like. It doesn't mean that if they are listening to NC that they listen to the entire local catalog. Look, if a song is hot, it's hot. Remember there was a song from Angola by Cabo Snoop, Windeck, years ago. People were jamming to that song, they didn't know. Years ago when I was young, there was a song called Macarena. People didn't know. As long as a song is hot, people will listen.
Okay, but then how will people know the song's good if they haven't heard it?
That's why would they not hear it if it's on the internet?
I mean, you just said that.
No, I'm saying, how will they not hear it if it's on the net?
If it's on, it's on the internet. I mean.
Then you're marketing in the wrong space.
Okay, so what is the right space?
I'm saying to you, you must listen to the thought process, right? If you're an artist, right, and you're starting up, I want to give you a song. There's a guy from Klerksdorp right now in hip hop. It's like blowing up like crazy. Magrela Doughboy, right? That guy's music is not an RB1, right?
Yeah.
That guy's music is not anywhere. So I've been seeing him. Like, I didn't know his music. I saw him perform once here at Manchester. But many people that went to see Doughboy, right, Magrela, they didn't go there knowing his catalog. They were just checking out his visuals, what he was doing, you know what I'm saying? And they're following his track record. And I can tell you, many people probably know one or two songs from his catalog. You get what I'm saying? And this is because of how he has branded himself. So my thing is that you can't say that. I mean, for me, it will be a waste of time. I mean, if we're gonna sit here and go back and forth about this thing, I need to educate you as well. You know, if you're an artist and you're starting out, like the starting point is the internet. Okay. So if today you're an artist, okay, and you are talking about radio, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You're starting at the wrong point. If you are today, you're talking about a box, which is a TV set. You're starting because with the internet, right? You are marketing everywhere. Somebody's in a taxi, they're on the phone, they can check what you're doing now.
Okay.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? If you trend, I'll give you, like, for
No,
example,
on that point,
yeah.
please allow me to ask you a question, right? So on that point, now, you've given me a bunch of examples of artists who have been successful. But what I'm trying to understand is, what are they doing that local artists aren't doing? Because it seems like what you're saying is that local artists aren't doing something that these guys are doing, and that's why they are being demanded.
No, I don't think that. I'm not saying that local artists are not doing something. I'm just trying to tell you that where the industry is at, right? Yeah. So I'm just trying to tell you where the industry is at.
Okay.
So, like, if I'm a label, right, and I'm gonna sign an artist out there, I'm not gonna waste my time with going chasing promoters with that artist. I'm gonna focus my time looking for a person who's good in IT. I'm gonna focus on getting a person who's good on social media marketing. I'm going to get a person who's good on graphics. I'm going to get a person who's good on visuals, on photography, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to push and brand that artist. I mean, it's happening now in front of our eyes. There's this artist who always pull out a T-shirt in South Africa, the piano guy. Toss, right? That guy literally just lives in the internet, doing some dance moves and stuff. So, for me, right, artists that will be popular in this country and that will take on the world, right?
Yeah.
Will break out on the internet because the consumers on the internet are 7 billion. So you are busy marketing to what? How many people are on the internet? So probably 100,000. So because artists now are brands and big companies are putting a lot of money in there, that is why you find that the space that everybody should be at, it's swallowed. I mean, if you look at Beyonce, Rihanna, all those big artists, you know, when they release albums, you find Times Square, there's billboards and everything. It's because these artists, right, are the biggest branders. I'll tell you, some of these artists, they don't have great music, right? But because right now, it's not about music. Right now, it's about brand positioning.
Okay, so now what I want to get to is exactly this, right? Because I think you've essentially hit the nail on the head here. What you have said is, these guys put a lot of money into branding and marketing themselves, and that's what makes it successful. And now my issue is, if Casper, for example, or let me use another example, because I don't have a problem with Casper, I'm a fan, right? If, let's say, Black Coffee, for example, right? If he is getting paid $100,000 per performance, he can easily afford to pump in 500,000 pula just to promote his videos on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on so on. So while you're saying, but guys should market themselves on the internet, the problem that artists encounter is that they don't have the same amount of money that all these artists from established multi-billion-dollar industries come from. And like you say, sometimes their music isn't even good. So now, how exactly are local artists supposed to compete with that if the government does not help them?
Yeah, I think you know what, you're going over the same point over and over again. The question is, you must ask yourself, how did Black Coffee get there? Right? Where did they start? How did Casper start? Right? Are we starting the right way? Are we making the right moves? You get what I'm saying?
I mean, how did they start? What are they doing that, say, ATI isn't doing?
I gave you a chance to speak, so allow me to. I want to give you a thought process, right? Look, man, an artist or music is a product like any other product. So you need a marketing plan. You need a strategy over time. You get what I'm saying? We should show the moves that you're making as a team. You get what I'm saying? It's not a one-man show. Like go to really like cycle where you can make it. Music has changed big time. You get what I'm saying? That's why you saw people were talking, or AK was with Don Design, and so was with Tab, you know, all the guys that are around, you know. An artist is not an individual. This thing that people are saying, yeah, ban artists and all, it's a fallacy. Okay? People have got an option to attend any show anywhere in the world, right? It's like a soccer match. We know many people that are living the Premier League in the stadium and watching English Premiership in the UK, or even attending Pirates and Chiefs games in South Africa. So what should happen, right? What should happen is that, first of all, artists must understand the power of the internet, okay? And understand how commerce happens in the internet in relation to music. Once they've understood those two fundamental aspects, right, then we've got a story to. But to sit here and say, if you're going to bet, for example, how many artists right now have got their music online available for sale?
Honestly, every local artist I know has their music online. On Apple Music, on Deezer, on Spotify.
I'm saying, I want you to reason this thing being factual. Is the majority of artists in Botswana, whether in rural areas and everywhere, having access to the internet and having their music in the internet?
Well, those that have access to the internet do have. I mean, what I'm trying to understand is
now.
I think you
hear my thought process, right? So we should not reason. You know what? I don't want to debate where it's like we're talking about this thing like a win or lose. You know what I'm saying? We need to educate people. You know what I'm saying?
I agree.
Yeah. So what I'm saying to you is that a lot of artists, right, their catalog is not online, right? It's not available on Deezer, Spotify. They've not digitized their catalog.
Mm-hmm.
Two, they've not branded themselves. I mean, if I can ask you, do you know any logo? Let's say, for example, Hennessy, like, if I was ask you, what is Hennessy's logo? Like, how does his brand look like?
But I don't know what Casper's brand looks like. What does his logo look like?
No. You don't know?
No. I don't know what Jay-Z. I don't know what Jay-Z's logo looks like. What does it look like?
Yeah, that's my point. Is that, look, I'm saying you must reason, right, to make a point that people can understand, not to reason to win a point. My point that I'm trying to drive to is that because you know the Jay-Z logo, right, you know, you are able to recall in your mind to say, that thing is Jay-Z, right? I'm trying to look for an artist. You know Tebe the Kwaito artist?
Yes.
For a very long time, like, Tebe's albums had that Tebe written in his handwriting. Yeah. For so many years, all his albums, right?
Yes.
When you wanted a Tebe album, you could see that this is Tebe, right? For me, like I'm saying, my king,
yes,
as long as artists they don't understand that we are in a branding thing, right? This industry is about brand positioning. Then we're going to talk about this. I can tell you now, to date, in nightclubs, people are booking influencers, people who know song. Just a person who's popular on social media, just because he's wearing nice clothes, they're booking them in a club to come there, and then everybody's coming there. I remember at one point people were flocking Cigar because Beauty was there. It was even before she started singing, right? So the industry has really changed. You know what I'm saying? It's about what you do with your brand, you know. Okay. So whatever that. So my point is that whatever that you do with your brand in Netland, too happy. If you look at almost all the shows in this country, right? Take for example some of the shows. They only had Ringo, and they had all the local artists there. One will say, Ringo, but that's not the point. The point is the effect. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
The effect. So for me, the impact, right, on local artists, it's not really, you know, it's not the biggest thing that I see is that there's no outbound or a huge number of artists going out. You can't have a country where people are looking inwards, right? And you know what I'm saying? Where no artist is not willing to make moves out. If you look at South African artists, they're moving out, right? I mean, you've got Black Coffee, you've got Euphonic, you've got Major Leagues, Trevor Noah, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, so what we need, right, as a solution, we need what is called a creative industry talent export strategy. That's what you need, you know what I'm saying? So that, you know, you've got touring artists. You can't be an artist where you are not even touring domestically, but you are saying that no, shut down the market. If you can't tour, you are yourself as an artist, like you can't go to Francistown, to Mau, to Hanzi, to Palape, everywhere on your own and tour domestically, right?
Yeah.
And you're already talking about banning anybody, right? Then you need to get yourself checked. So for me, I'm not going to allow myself to disintegrate into an argument, right? Where actually we could be saying, guys, this is where the problem is, and this is how we can sort it out.
Okay, so then what I'm trying to understand here is that if, like you're saying, we need to be exporting our artists, and those same artists are barely getting booked locally at their events, right? Wouldn't it make sense to then, firstly, ban international artists, so these artists are being demanded and booked somewhere, and then after they're being booked, then start working on figuring how can we start exporting this local industry that is flourishing locally.
Yeah, man. I mean, look, that doesn't work. I mean, Sam Smith blew up in the US before blowing up in UK. Leona Lewis, the same thing. I mean, it's not about you studying at home all the time, right? It's about the industry trend right now. I mean, Trevor Noah years was big in South Africa, right? But he blew up in the US before blowing up in Europe and in Asia, right? So, to be honest, for me, it's about just strategy in terms of brand position. For me, like I'm saying, I find the discussion, right, stale. You know what I'm saying? For me, if you believe that you're going to ban artists from coming here to try to develop the audience here, then your argument is still born, right? Because people have got an opportunity to go in. Because right now, going to concert is an experience. You know what I'm saying? I mean, people are living here, going to Mauda, booking hotels, they're doing a lot of stuff. It's not just buying a ticket and going to see artists. There are many things that are involved in an event. You get what I'm saying? It's about the experience. Can you give people who are buying tickets the whole experience? You know what I'm saying? So, and also, you also must put in your head to understand that if you think that by doing that, promoters will book local artists, you might be putting yourself for a big surprise, because the same promoters might go to South Africa and stage events there, or go to Zimbabwe, or go to Zambia. There's nothing that stops them from setting up companies there and staging events there. What you need to do first is that you need to grow the art here organically. You know what I'm saying? Without shoving it into people's throats. Once it grows organically, then everybody else will follow. Like the same thing with my piano guys, right? They've grown organically, right? So you can't stop that sound. You know what I'm saying? I mean, there was a time in Botswana, maybe 10 years ago, this traditional music was big, right? It was good. I mean, even the girls, they would rather like jump and go with the traditional guys than the hip hop guys. And those guys were like, "We're happy." I don't know what happened. You know what I'm saying? Because traditional music grew organically. People could hear the words. They could like relate to the music. You know what I'm saying? So you've got to make your music relate to people first. You know what I'm saying? You need to make sure that your brand stands out there, and it's people like really think. So for me, like, yeah, what a lot of block about when you're wasting your time and resources.
Okay, last question before we let you go, because you've been great. Do you think as a promoter you can do a show with an all local lineup and still get your return on an investment?
Yes and no. You know what I'm saying? It depends on what am I trying to achieve. You know, guys, when you do an event, like, you're not doing it to prove it or with local artists or how potentially foreign mad. It depends on your concept at that particular time and juncture. You get what I'm saying? So an event is a business. So when you're doing an event, you're not doing it to prove it or local is like it and stuff like that. You are doing it to make money. So I mean, sometimes people, they see some of these concepts on a Sunday and it's local artists and people are pegged, then they say, it's the business model of that particular event. So people must understand that these things are businesses. Like an event is a business, that the business entity on its own. It's not like an event is an event is not staged because you are promoting local artists or empowering them. And an event is staged, and the impetus is for those that invest in an event to make money. That's the impetus. If you want something to do with local artist empowerment and artist you go to government, you go to the arts council and stuff. So you can't ask people who are private businesses it's like going to banks. You know what I'm saying? Like a bank. If you go to a bank today, right? The bank will ask you, would I make my money back? How are they going to pay me? Right? How do I know? Presidential you get what I'm saying? So these arguments are it's just two streets, one going this way, one going that side. So ya di promoter ya di artists tsong go toro ka di banner ka re it will never gore like batho ba ska ba tsiediwa ke gore hey ne re khanetse tapole gore itle kwa right hey a potato that is planted in South Africa and the one that's planted in Ghana, they taste the same, right? But a song that's from Nigeria or from Ghana or from Botswana or from wherever, it doesn't sound the same. Or even songs that are produced here, they don't sound the same. You know what I'm saying? It's different sounds. So tamati elimino, because the reason why you are able to say no, for example, no uniform. Everybody is compulsory to uniform. So people are not forced to go to pina. You know what I'm saying? But how you are school, school, how's apparent from it's compulsory. So I think people, they always confuse these things. You know what I'm saying? And they think that like the music industry, like it's an away sale and so. No, it's not like that. There's no free meal in the industry. You get in there, it's a business, it's a cutthroat business. You've got to brand yourself. You've got to grow your brand. You got to make yourself that you appeal. You've got to drop a song that's popular. You've got to take your brand everywhere. And then once you've done that successfully, right, people will say, that guy, they'll start calling you a crowd puller. They'll pump money. And you'll start seeing people fight. And promoters, like I'm saying, are facilitators. They are not enablers. They just facilitate transactions between them, between you and your audience. So they book you so that you can meet your audience. They don't enable you to go to your audience. Your label, your record label, your managers, they are the ones that must enable you to be in touch with your fans. But do not facilitate our routes and for that particular time. Then we move you, we facilitate the next guy. You know what I'm saying? Promoters are a platform. They are not like promoters are not like an headline. So for me, like I'm saying, I think artists are misguided about this foreign artists. The moment they just get this thing out of their heads, the better.
Okay, well, thank you so much for your time.
You want to share anything you're working on, anything you want to tell people? This is your
any project, any project you're working on that you want to say. And where can people follow you?
I'm on Instagram, _Mudibe, Twitter, @Bizo.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't like speaking about what I'm doing.
Okay, fair enough. You promote other people, not yourself. Fair enough. No, thank you so much. I really appreciate your perspective. I think you've given us some insight on the realities of the industry. We really appreciate it. I think our audience appreciates it as well. Thank you very, very much for being our guest today. All right. Yes, that was Mr. Sabelo Mudibe. And we're going to go on a quick break and then we'll be right back.
As a wise man once said, it is better to debate the question and never settle on an answer, rather than accept an answer without debating it. Another wise man once asked Fangz, how do you stimulate the economy? You have to find its G-spot.
Indeed. And maybe we need to find the music industry's G-spot, bro, because it needs stimulation. I want to read a comment right quickly.
Wait. But before you get to the comments, Fangz, I just want to just do a very, very quick recap, 1 minute, of what Sabelo said, man. You know, even though Uno some rates, but I feel like he was bringing some powerful points here that, look, the landscape has changed. And, like, as an artist, you should no longer consider yourself as belonging to a border. I think that's essentially his main point, is that artists need to just start thinking borderlessly. Gore, don't think there's an international artist. Just be like, okay, everybody's an artist. So what do you think of that? Like, you know, do you think like that we're moving towards this borderless world? And, you know, all these things you're talking about, streaming the Super Bowl and things like that.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I can remember, say, 10, 15 years ago when artists stopped, and it was that long ago, the biggest artists in the world, the likes of Jay-Z and so on, stopped really making much money off of music sales, for example, right? And it became about, because the internet means we can access their music so much easier, so much cheaper, right? So I agree, the landscape, for free even on YouTube, right? So I agree that the landscape has changed.
And people must be borderless. Think of yourself as an artist, not as a Botswana artist.
100%. You know what the reality is, though, right? And I think that's the one thing that our guest didn't really engage with. Was
he's done this for 23 years.
Was that 99.99999% of all artists who become successful start off being successful at home first. And by home, I mean, like, for example, Nas blew up in Brooklyn, right? And he was booked. Jay-Z was huge. DMX was huge in Brooklyn long before the Bronx, long before we ever heard their name. Paul Wall sold 1 million records before we had his music even played on MTV.
But he also mentioned, like, they managed to do that because of how they branded themselves.
Exactly. And that's what he was saying. He was saying that even in their local spaces, their approach was always about, I need to make sure my whole team is on point. I need to make sure I've got this guy doing this. I've got a graphics guy. How many artists do you know, like he said, and just jump on stage and just be like, especially Lonama hip hop. Shout out to the hip hop community. I love you guys.
Yeah. I mean, you see, that's what I felt was a real mischaracterization of what local artists are doing. Because essentially what it's saying is, that argument is saying local artists don't brand themselves well. That's why they're not getting booked. But here, I'll give you a live example. Mposi Bina gets booked more outside Botswana than she does locally.
Because she's
right?
Because of the way she branded herself.
Hang on. My point is, she's somebody who is branded well. She sings in Setswana, but she doesn't get booked in Botswana, the country that understands what she's singing about. Not nearly as much as she does outside the country. And that's the point. The point is, there are many artists who have teams, who have a team of software programmers, who have graphic designers, who have A&Rs, right? But they're not getting booked anywhere near as much.
But then that reason cannot just be because of international. Maybe their efforts are just not good enough. Maybe what their product is putting out is just not good enough.
Yeah, well, like our guest said, which I really liked, was he said some of these artists' music isn't even good, but because of how well they brand themselves. And the reality is, Chief, all of these artists that we've spoken about, the international artists we're talking about, come from countries where their art, their music industry on its own is worth billions of dollars. I don't even think Botswana's music industry is worth $1 million. So for real. So now, how are you expecting to compete with the marketing power of, say, Interscope or Sony, which is who's actually pushing these South African artists and Nigerian artists? How is ATI supposed to compete with that?
Well, like we said, but again, we're going around in circles. But I liked his perspective, just this idea of that you need to invest in your brand. And he mentioned something very critical. I think he mentioned this off air. Even media houses, media brands, they no longer just look at your talent. They want to see what your digital footprint size is. Even some movies casting, you need to have a certain amount of followers 100. To get on that cast. 100%. So good. That's what he's aiming at. Our artists putting themselves on that level of pedestal the same way, because you can't now that internet is the equalizer.
Yeah. But you see, that's what people seem to think. They seem to think that, oh yeah, the internet, you just put it on the internet and now like the world will see it. right? That's not the reality, right? If you want your stuff to be seen on Facebook, Chief, you know you have to boost it. You have to spend money on it. If you want it
No,
to
but
be
if
seen-
it's good enough, we'll share it.
No, that's not true, Chief. All of these artists that go viral, I mean, with the exception of like 1 out of 100, 1 out of 100 will do that. William Lass is boosting his posts right now.
No, but when he
right?
blew up,
Yeah,
when
my
Lass
point,
boosted,
why is he doing it now when he has blown up, Chief? It's because that's the way that you get a footprint. Right, that's the way that you stay in people's consciousness. That's what branding is. So, like, this is a chicken and egg argument. It's like, do people does it start off with you branding yourself and then people like you, and then you start making money, or do you make money and then start branding yourself? And the example I want to use that taken from our guest speech was when he spoke about 10 years ago, traditionally blew up and it was in demand. You know what happened around circa that time, right? The quotas, government quotas on playing local music. And then a result of that was now local music starts being more in demand. Right? So like this is my point. It's not that our music is bad or better than anyone else's. It's the same. But our artists don't have the platform that these promoters provide.
Yeah, tota promoters are not here to make or break artists. They're here to make their money.
100%.
So it's about the return on investment.
100.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't, like, I'm not suggesting that you tell them who to book.
Yeah.
I'm just saying you tell them you can't book anyone from outside here, now make the money.
Okay. We've been showing the show's been going on for a while. Let's get to these comments and wrap it up, Mr. Fangz. So there's some live comments that came in. There's a lot of comments that came in earlier. Unfortunately, we won't read all 200 something comments, but we'll get through as many as we can, right? Let me read through a couple things and then you'll go. There's one coming from Mpo Grace Israel. Ari. Made the comment tse dingwe ba ragela di artist, so I guess gore I got the di bala with I'll read freedom of speech. Le gale kana this is muale buala
As long as the city club.
I feel out we mustn't throw shade. But anyway, this guy Mpo Grace Israel are Oscar Bora teacher 2 hours. Imagine. Anyway, then there's KC Aziz Zedika kana Zedika. Are no, I kere batswakanya mingo, I think batswakanya mino gore maitiso ane monate. Akanya wile gore etsa V the whole night. Kibo yo no. Again, let's not throw shade. I wouldn't mind listening to V the whole night.
No, but I mean, I wouldn't even want to listen to my favorite artist the whole night, right? You go to a gig, you want to see 5-6 different artists. So there will be 5-6 different artists. They just won't have a South African passport.
Okay, let me read a couple more and then you will read some comments that side. From Trust Mshate Safa Are.
Senior Cisco Are. It's a bad thing to do this. This will discourage young and upcoming stars and will dismiss the quality and the value the industry holds.
I sort of agree with you. Then there's Buemo Woto Are. Resumurala huitisa ka matloali. And then there's one that's supporting our guest Mohomuti Godson. Where Sabe, you said it all. Then there's a comment coming from Bena Kobotwe. We speak of integrating the world system into one entity. What we should be discussing is how we empower local artists hore ba kgone go compete in a global market. Ask these international artists hore bone ba kgonne jwang go bookiwa all over the world. Your Black Coffees, Burner Boys, etc. Also encourage, facilitate collaborations. Let's honor the international artists.
I actually have an interesting anecdote, right? Firstly, what I think a lot of people misunderstand here is Botswana seem to think all of these art industries in these other countries, they grew organically without government support. And that's not the fact, right? That's not reality. In all of these countries, the government put in hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars into these industries in order to get them to the point where they are. A good example, the president of Switzerland was here just last week. And you know what he was here doing? Promoting art and trying to push Swiss artists, right? So the point is, this idea that art can grow and become international standard without clear government support, it's a fallacy. It doesn't exist anywhere.
Okay, there's a comment coming from Bello Mabule. The idea is not that bad. At least ban for a year and evaluate how the industry is doing. Let's make our own celebs. Mualebe. And then there's Tato Buzzman. And force us to music we don't like. We are not even 10% as advanced in music compared to South Africa. We are years away from thinking we can ban international music, especially SA. Let's stop dreaming and admit we are far from being there. Rather ban Botswana artists from going international because they don't represent us well. Oh, this guy. Sometimes we all look foolish. While on that, please ban international alcohol because it's below us. I like your sarcasm. I think that was sarcasm
No,
at
what?
the
What
end.
you saying? What you
Unless
saying
he
is
really means that, but I like where he's going with this. And look, where this topic came from was this idea that, as a country, we keep banning things, right, to grow local industries.
Exactly.
So why should artists be exempt from these
From this
bans?
whole idea. And
So
correct.
this is the way it goes next. Alcohol,
No, you
and
see-
the danger of protectionist policies is that
No, it's
now
not.
you start to always try and look inward.
No, it's not, Chief, right? Because, see, the alcohol industry in Botswana, St. Louis does not need support. It competes very successfully. Ko ya compete very successfully. So, right?
Outsider.
Right? Those things, they compete. These local alcohols, they're able to compete. Fine, right? Right? I don't know. I never drank it. Right? But the point is, there's demand for these things, right? So you don't.
But St. Louis export died out.
Yeah, you know why? Because of government policy.
Oh,
right?
really?
Yes,
Really?
yes.
Well, I mean,
because
some of these things. Look,
it
some of
actually-
these things. This is why we always like
No,
to bring in these experts so that we can break down.
I mean-
but look. I just want to get to a few of these comments before we run out of time because we are like well over time. Then there's Michael Jingpao. The question is, does local have what it takes to shut the door for international artists to be booked locally? Reciprocation. And then there's Oabuluka Taolo. I think this one is on the side of our guest. Our music is art. It's either you have it or don't have it. For people to like your art, it must be good. You can't force people to like local artists while most of them don't have killer hits. Those people you call international artists, they worked hard to produce fine art to be recognized across the borders. We do have local artists who are recognized outside our borders because they produce good music. If we ban international artists, do we expect other countries to ban our artists as well? With this new technology, it is easy for us to see artists globally, and you can have talent. It doesn't matter where you are. Okay, thanks. Give us your final thought in 30 seconds so we
Right.
can close the show.
Yes. All right. So for me, I found out recently that Nigeria, end of last year, in October last year, they banned international models and voice actors.
Yeah.
Right. Specifically for this reason. This is a country. This is Nigeria. They've got 300 million people. Their advertising industry, 300 million, million people. They've got their advertising industry is got billions of dollars in it, and yet they still see it fit to empower their local models and their local voice artists by making sure that they are protected from the competition of external voice actors.
Yeah.
Right now, they have a lot of reasons for this, but the point here is this is a country that is far bigger, right? Far more developed in terms of their art industry, their modeling industry, all of their industries essentially are more developed than ours. And even then, they still see a need to protect their artists. For some reason, Botswana, we don't see a need to protect our artists. We don't see it, and that's dangerous because art is how we document our story, right? It's how we tell Botswana's story. And without it, we are basically listening to the stories of other countries, and that's not good for us or our future.
Okay, you know what the difference between Nigeria and Botswana is, Fangs? Our accents. No, but like on a serious note, right? You can't compare a market like Nigeria's market because there's certain other things. Like I said, we depend a lot on our immediate neighbors for so many things because of the fact that we're landlocked. And like you mentioned, Nigeria has over 300 million people. There's so many other comparative advantage areas that they could trade in if suddenly they stop bringing in voiceover artists and models and stuff, right? But look, most importantly, and I think where this debate lies into, it's two things, right? Whether or not protectionism works over a free trade market, and I think globally free trade is the order of the day. Like, we're moving to a more integrated world. So protectionism is eventually going to die. Whether it happens naturally or it happens by force, it will die because, once the free market opens up, everybody will be able to compete. But lastly, the most important point in today's debate is about choice, right? Is that people should have a choice to consume whatever products they want to. The same way when you go to a supermarket and there's so many different types of tomato sauce, you will still go for that all gold because you believe that it's the premium brand. And that's what the free market gives you. It gives you choice and it gives you the best products going forward. And with that said, ladies and gentlemen, we are the voice. You are the people. It has been an amazing debate show. We will see you again next week. Do send in your suggestions of issues that you want to see debated. And always remember that Mokotleng Mahoko Amantle Oche.
Good night.
From the moment we wake up, we step into the shoes that are ready to conquer the day. Places to go, people to see, but there's no stopping this beauty. So let go and be free to celebrate your confidence. Take control of your day with Legends Legendary Wave products to keep your wave sensational this season. Apply wave control evenly over the waves to keep your hair soft, smooth, with a gentle shine to give you the confidence you need to change the world. Live your legacy in style. Ease into the smooth wave of the day and become unstoppable. Be legendary with Legends Barbershop. Living your legacy in style.
We know what you're looking for.
Your specially grilled newspaper, spiced with lifestyle, sport, entertainment, politics, business, and international news. The Voice is available every Friday. Subscribe now. The Voice.